Okay, should be live. Admit all, streaming on Facebook. Hey, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Happy Wednesday. We are letting everyone in from the waiting room. Hello, Melody, Sarah, Maritza, Lynn, Yvonne, Jewel, Carolyn, Angela, Jane, Suzanne, Rick, Al Hussein. Al Hussein, nice to meet you. Is this your first time?
Heather, how are you? Carolyn, look at that. Rick in the house. Love it.
Jillian.
Jewel, bringing back downtown, baby. Raise your hand if you put makeup on today. Raise your hand if you put makeup on today just for this call. Oh, yeah.
Hello, Tess. Hello, Brittany. Hello, Lauren. Hello, Megan.
Joyce in the house.
Welcome, welcome. How is everyone doing?
We're good. Thank you.
Surviving.
Surviving, yeah.
Megan, oh my God, is that Megan from Austin? Is that Megan from Austin?
Megan.
One and only.
Great to see you here.
Thanks. Wednesdays are usually my busiest days, so I was really excited that I had some time this afternoon.
You can always catch the recording. What?
Also, I guess Megan's the one that kind of sparked our title for today. We're going to talk about titles, administrative professional titles. So got a couple more people joining, but let's go ahead and kick off. First of all, a couple announcements. I'm back from vacation, as you can see. Very thankful to Al Hussein and Megan Strout from TAC Advisors for running an awesome webinar last week. So thanks for doing that. We're back on today for our regularly scheduled events. And I've got an event coming up September 25th with Monique Hellstrom, who has hopped into one or two of these Wednesday Zoom chats. It's leaderassistantlive.com. Just click on event schedule and you can see the info on that. September 25th, it's a Friday afternoon, 1 p.m. Pacific time, and leaderassistantlive.com to check out the info on that. We'd love to have you join Monique and myself. And then Al Hussein and I are working on more helpful events for the fall. And then obviously we've got our membership as well, where we do one group coaching training call every month in the membership as well. And you can find out information on that at leaderassistant.com/membership. So without further ado, I'll let Al Hussein jump in and chat about what title should I have, Al Hussein? Should I be an executive assistant? Should I be an administrative assistant? Should I be an executive business partner? Should I be a chief of staff? There's so many different titles out there. Does the title really matter? Let's hear your thoughts.
Yeah, what's in a name? What's in a name? So first of all, show of hands visually, who currently has the word assistant in your title? Administrative assistant, executive assistant. Okay. Who here has the word secretary in your title? Show of hands. Okay. How many of you here believe, you don't need to have data to prove this, but believe in your heart that secretary is a pejorative term to describe what we do? Okay. So here's the reality. If you are thinking about a title change, or if you are entering a new job, a new role, and human resources or the company has said this is going to be your title, it is a very interesting conversation that you're about to have. Why? Because what matters in addition to title, and perhaps more than title, is actually your job description. Title aside, what matters is your job description, and what matters more than your job description is what, Rick?
Put them on the spot.
So you put me on the spot with what was the question again? I'm sorry.
What matters more than your job description? What matters more than your title?
What you do in your job description. I mean, what you actually do.
Okay, Angela, what do you got for me? What matters more than your title, more than your job description, more than what you do?
Show me the money.
That's what I'm talking about, baby. Show me the money. Cash, money, honey. Cash, money, honey. Cash, money, honey. Okay, what do I mean? You can call me secretary if you pay me $200,000 a year. You can call me janitor if you pay me $250,000. I don't care what my title is, honey. Right? You see what I'm saying? So what we need to do is we need to level set the conversation. Okay, what is the goal? What is the goal? Is the goal to get a higher title so that your next role, you can get the even higher title and remove the word assistant from your title, and you're willing to take a decrease in compensation in order for that future state? What is the broader strategy? What is your career trajectory? Because I know executive assistants, I know secretaries, I know administrative assistants with the word assistant in their title who are making $350,000 a year cash. Oh, I'll take that job. Titles don't matter. What matters is job description and cash comp, right? Equity, benefits, 401k, the whole kit and caboodle. I know personal assistants, PAs, who traverse the globe, who are making $500,000 a year, and their business card says personal assistant to executive. You can call me whatever you want. Just pay me. All right. So that's the foundation. Now, but what do we do? Because I'm stuck in this system. I work for this, nonprofit, or I work for this big corporation that has all this leveling in place and an HR person, and they have established that these are the only titles that exist for this role. What do I do? So it's hard to provide general advice without knowing somebody's specific situation, but be careful who you receive advice from. What am I saying? I'm saying if you are seeking advice about this topic from somebody who has never, ever learned or participated in or been in or touched human resources, you are being given bad advice. If you don't know what it feels like to be on the other side of the table, to understand the complexity of the decisions that are required to why there even needs to be a title to begin with, if you have not sought that advice, you are receiving bad advice. You cannot just assume that, I want the title Executive Life Manager and I'm going to demand it. You can't ask for things that are, if you don't know what the realm of the possibilities are within your based on human resources. Now, you're talking to somebody who's traversed the executive assistant title, who's traversed the executive business partner title, who's become a chief of staff and now works in human resources. And I can tell you the most annoying thing in the world is having employees ask for things that don't actually exist. Because they're asking for title when what they really are saying, my job description has changed and my current title does not reflect my job. And by the way, it's derogatory to call me an assistant when I'm actually a manager, or it's derogatory to call me assistant when I'm actually making strategic decisions on the part of my executive. And so the conversation should shift from away from title to what is it you're actually doing? What is the job description? And then what is in the realm of possibility of titles that human resources has at its disposal to permit you to have, that you can negotiate to have, right? And wherein do you have negotiating power? You have negotiating power before you sign an employment contract. You have negotiating power during your performance reviews, and you have negotiating power when you're about to walk out the door. And so I can help. If your situation is like, I'm about to leave my company because they won't give me the right title, maybe you're asking the wrong thing. Maybe what you need is actually start with a different job description. Because frankly, how many of you, let's just take a poll. How many of you have actually rewritten your job description in the last 6 months? It all starts, for human resources, it all starts with a piece of paper called your job description. Because you can articulate as much as you want for a new title, but unless you have a piece of paper that clearly articulates what your roles and responsibilities are, and then how that differentiates from an assistant, from a secretary, from a personal assistant, from an executive assistant, from a senior executive assistant, from executive assistant 1, 2, 3, 4, it doesn't matter. You need to have a cohesive document that articulates your job description. It's based on that job description that we determine compensation, not title. And it's based on compensation and the company's job matrix that we determine title. Now, title comes last. Title doesn't matter. And by the way, LinkedIn is a social media network. LinkedIn is not a resume. If I put on LinkedIn right now that I work for Google, I cannot get sued. And Google can't force me to take that off. If I put right now on LinkedIn that I'm a chaos tamer, not an executive assistant, but a chaos tamer, which actually was my title at Facebook, nobody is to say otherwise, right? And so what you put on, what you share to the world as your business function should and can be different than what your business title is based on your HRIS profile that spits out a paycheck every pay period. Do you see what I'm saying? Differentiate these things in your head. So you could be called internally in your company a administrative assistant, but you know you support the CEO and you know your job description, you can run circles around other executive assistants in other industries. It's perfectly fine for you to call yourself on LinkedIn a senior executive assistant, chaos tamer, scheduling ninja, brand ambassador, culture carrier, awesome sauce. Okay, what am I getting at? The question is, what is the goal? Is the goal to get a new job and therefore you're trying to promote yourself differently, project yourself differently publicly on LinkedIn so you get a role that has EA in the title or something different than EA? Fine, that's a different goal than arguing with HR or negotiating with your manager what your new title should be. But let's level set for a second. Who do you get advice from? Don't get advice from somebody who's never been on the other side of the table and doesn't understand the limitations of HR. Don't ask for things you will never receive. And lastly, make sure that you actually can articulate in writing your job description, your value. And when I mean job description, I don't mean I calendar, I do travel, I do expenses, I do other duties as assigned. No, no, no. Calendar, travel, expenses, other duties as assigned. That sounds like a secretary. That sounds to me like an assistant. articulate in your strategic relationship that you have with your executive and your return on investment of your time that you are creating for your executive, for your company in your job description. That's how you traverse a different title. That's how you traverse from assistant to business partner to chief of staff. Okay, now let's have a conversation about that. Have I lost anybody? It's a lot of information, I know.
We have one question in. What do you suggest if HR is kind of blocking you, or is the reason that there hasn't been movement?
How do I know that to be true? Again, we need to have a personal conversation about that, because your situation, what you perceive to be an HR block may not actually be a block. It may be par for the course. Did you know it's HR policy to reject title changes? Did you know that? Like, that's the policy. The policy is we will reject title changes when employees ask us for them. They're actually doing their job by rejecting your advances. Now, what is your reaction to that? Your reaction is you can sit down, you can leave, or you can actually start a conversation, not just with HR, but with your manager about your exact job description. It's not a good policy, but the reality is this is a game. I'm sorry to be the first person to tell you, but this is a game. Do you want to win or not? This whole career thing, it's a game, right? HR, it's all a game. It's about how do you navigate the game? How do you navigate the game? Now, before we get into Q&A, how do you navigate the game, right? If you know somebody is always going to show up and tell you the same thing, how do you influence that reality? You have recourse. You have recourse. Just like it's an HR's job to underpay you. Just like it's in their job to only give you a certain level of salary. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Don't make it personal. They're just doing their job. You got to do your job, which is negotiate. You got to do your job, which is come up with data to prove otherwise. They're just doing their job. This is how this is in their job description, right? This is in their job description. Do I dislike it? Yes. Are there some companies that are better about it than others? Absolutely, right? Like some companies, like Google, they're like, look, you don't even have to negotiate. We're going to pay you high, right? Other companies are like, you know what? We're always going to give you, the first offer is going to be low. That's their job. That's just part of their ethos. We choose to work there. All right, but what do we do? What do we do when we have a situation where you're like, okay, what title should I ask for? Now that we've figured out the job description and we've had the conversation with somebody who can coach you along this process and actually get you an increase in compensation, what title to ask for? Well, think about it again from the first question I asked. Secretary. Seems pejorative. Will the word assistant be also seen pejorative in the future? Perhaps. Perhaps. If you want general advice, my general advice would be as follows. And I hate giving general advice because then people quote me on it and they say, I followed your advice, but it didn't work. And I'll say, well, you never talked to me. I didn't get a phone call. You never pinged me. You never DM'd me. I couldn't give you direct information because you attended one of my sessions and you got general advice. But I'm going to give you general advice because you're asking for general advice. If you remove general advice, but what did I say earlier? I know personal assistants who are making $350 US cash a year, and they love being personal assistants. Okay, but here's some general advice. I know executive assistants who are making $250 a year, cash, money, honey. Call them anything you want. Call them secretary. They're still making that cash. But here's some general advice. General advice. General advice. Remove the word assistant from your title. You will be paid more. Remove the word assistant from your title, you will be paid more. General advice. Why do I know this? How do I know this? Because I track the trend of the word secretary and compensation. And secretaries today are paid the least. And assistant is going the way the word secretary is going. And the quicker you can remove that word from your title or add additional words to your title that reflect your true value add to the business, the quicker your compensation will change and the quicker other elements will change as well. Now, here's a suggestion. General advice, general advice, general advice. Here's a suggestion. We know if you're part of this coaching session, we know you're a leader assistant. We know you're a leader assistant. We know you're a leader assistant. Your boss knows you're a leader assistant. Your boss knows you're a leader assistant. Does HR know? Does your company know? Are they old school? Are they new school? There has been a trend over the last 8 years, seven years, where the word assistant is being removed from titles and being replaced. Administrative assistant is being gone away with, and executive assistant is gone away with. And the titles that are replacing them are administrative business partner and executive business partner. The word assistant doesn't show up in the title. What happens when the word assistant doesn't show up in the title? Your compensation changes. Also, there is a precedent, a human resources precedent built on the foundation of the US Department of Labor, okay, that says that titles with BP in it, business partner, are to be compensated differently and perceived differently to the business than assistant. We have a precedent for this. How many of you know in your company human resource business partners, HRBPs? Have you ever heard that title? What about FBPs, financial business partners? Have you ever heard that title? Now you've heard EBPs, executive business partners. There is an analogy. There is a precedent for BP for the support function, which is in the G&A function, not sales, not marketing, not engineering, not product, G&A, right? General and administrative function for an HRBP, a finance BP, and now an EBP, an executive business partner. And that is not just pushed from the ground up from companies from New York to Silicon Valley, but now being reflected in US Department of Labor in terms of compensation. So if you're going to ask for a title, if you're going to ask to be proactive, if you're going to ask for cutting edge, EBP is that title. And there's precedent for it, and HR knows there's precedent for it because all of their people are called HRBPs. And there's companies, publicly traded companies, Google, Pinterest, that use these titles, right? This is not like some foreign thing coming out of like left field. No, these are actually the world's greatest companies are using these titles and are doing away entirely with the word assistant. Entirely, and what we find is their compensation shifts immediately. Okay.
So what if, Hussein, we got 6 minutes. We got 6 minutes left.
Administrative business partner and executive business partner. Go ahead.
Yeah, so we've got 6 minutes left, and we've got a good question that looks like Nora asked about, they're doing a company-wide review. They're trying to put you into a lower band with the possibility of getting a pay cut. And I think the general question a lot of people have on this note is what, I've seen, and you've seen, I'm sure too, that a lot of the times it's not about the title, it's about the culture of the company, it's about the revenue of the company, it's about the situation. And so it ultimately, like you said in the beginning, it's not about the title, it's about the job description, scope of work, and then the compensation. So what do you do? What's your 2-minute general advice for what you do if you're in this position where you've tried to negotiate, it's not working, you're getting up against some resistance, they're trying to actually put you in a lower band potentially. What's your general advice for those struggling? It's not necessarily a title thing, it's more of just the overall situation.
Look, I believe we create our futures. We own our destinies. The world does not happen to me. I happen to the world. As leader assistants, that's a core tenet of our community. If it doesn't change, you change, right? Ping me. Let's set up a call. It's hard to give general advice on this topic because every company is different. I know a chief of staff in a Midwestern local regional corporation with $100 million, well, it's like $8 million of revenue. It's valued at about $100 million. But I know a administrative assistant at a $2.1 trillion company called Apple. And she loves her title and she's making $280 a year. But this other one who has a chief of staff title is making something like $62,000. Everything depends on more than just title. It's scope of work, it's culture of the company, it's revenue, it's valuation, it's international, is it not international, is it local, is it not local, is it tech, is it not tech, what vertical is it in, what geography is it in, where do you live, how, there's so many variables. Make sure you're fighting the right fight. If you don't know the variables, you're probably not fighting the right fight. Don't overextend and fight for something you can't get. But
what about, no, go ahead.
So other titles, let's talk about other titles really quick. Here's some examples. Okay, one of my clients, we got her a title, Director of the Office of the CEO. Do you see the word assistant in her title? Do you see the word executive in her? No. Why? Because with her company and her HR team, it was critical that we identify the level of complexity and strategy she engages, which is director, not just manager, director. And it's the office of the CEO, not just one person, two people, but the entire suite, right? Again, make sure the title reflects what's best of your company and your culture, but also scope of work. Here's some other titles. So executive business partner, there's chief of staff, there's director of the office of the CEO. How about executive assistant manager? Did you know that if you have manager in your title, people automatically assume that you're getting paid more, and oftentimes you are? What about chief executive assistant? What about executive assistant lead, right? If you can't get the word manager or director. Some of my clients have gotten lead, the word L-E-A-D, lead in their title, and is automatically reflected higher compensation because it means they're leading the executive assistant team. Even though they aren't formally, because nobody reports to them, but do they have influence beyond themselves? Absolutely. Right? Why? Because their scope of work reflects that. If you are onboarding executive assistants, if you are training executive assistants, if you are managing any aspect of their job, you deserve a manager title or lead title or influencer title, right? We've got some clients who are director of corporate culture. What do they do every day? They're the executive assistant to the CEO. But what do we call her? Director of corporate culture. Why? Because she's a culture carrier for that company and everybody goes through her. She sets the bar for the culture, right? You can get out of the EA title altogether. It's quite freeing. Any questions? So executive business partner is a bridge to chief of staff. Chief of staff means different things to different people based on where you live and what city you live in and your race and your ethnicity and the color of hair you have. I swear. If you're in the military, chief of staff means one thing. If you're in tech, it means something else. If you're in Facebook, chief of staff means one thing, but at Google, it means something else. Did you know that? Everybody has a different definition of chief of staff, which is why it's a terrible title and why most executives hate it. Because how dare you have a C in your title, a C-suite, when you are, quote, just a secretary. So you get that reaction from HR. So stop fighting a fight if you know that's going to be the reaction. Because by the way, most executives hate that title. Right? So chief of staff means different things to different people. Sometimes it's like you need to have an MBA and you need to own a vertical in the business. And sometimes it means you're just a culture carrier. Depends on your own situation. It's hard to give general advice around chief of staff. I know some executive assistants who are now called business managers. That's their title. They got the word executive and assistant out of their title. They're called business managers. Their compensation is quite high. Most executive assistants who've traversed to the next level at companies like Facebook and Snapchat use business manager in their title. Operations manager, operations director, director of executive operations, manager of executive operations. Get the word assistant out of your title, your compensation is going to change. General advice, general advice, general advice. I hate giving general advice, but you asked for it. Does that make sense?
All right. Sorry, my CEO's pinging me. We're over our time. So we've got this on Facebook. Ping us in Slack or on the Facebook chat, and we'll address more. But it sounds like there's a lot more questions on this topic. So maybe we'll do another round next week about this kind of general compensation, titling, job description conversation.
I recommend we do it on our next Saturday session, Jeremy. This is like a lot to unpack, and I want to go into everybody's situation. Like I know somebody who works in oil and gas today in Texas who's trying to change her title. I'm working with her to try and change her title. It is an uphill battle. However, I'm in HR. I'm working with her HR leader. I think we're going to win. Right? I'm not asking for more compensation. All I'm asking for is title, because what I know is that next performance review, compensation is automatically triggered within their HR system. Know the battles you're fighting for and when to fight them. Sometimes you can't get the whole kit and caboodle. Win the small battles to win the war.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Ping us if you have questions. Have a great Wednesday and the rest of your week, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.